Welcome everyone to Monday Match Analysis. I'm Gill Gross, and for the 60th time, Rafael Nadal and Novak Djokovic will play a professional tennis match against each other, which we will all have the pleasure to witness. There are other things going on. There are finals that went down on the ATP Tour last week. Congratulations to Berrettini, back-to-back titles after winning Kitzbühel. Francisco Cerundolo, big title in Umag. And as I'm recording this, Rinderknecht and Nishioka are in a rain delay in the final in Atlanta. Normally on Monday Match Analysis, I would be talking about those finals. But right now, nothing feels as important or as interesting as the upcoming second-round match at the Paris Olympics between Nadal and Djokovic. This might be the last time that I get to spitball coming into a matchup between these two. So I want to just focus on that. That's what felt right for this particular edition of Monday Match Analysis. Plan for the rest of the week, I'm going to do a post-match on this, which is a Tuesday match. So I'll have post-match analysis on this. I'm going to do a mailbag on Wednesday. And then you likely won't hear from me again until the following Monday for Monday Match Analysis, because I have some commentary duties. So normally I'd have maybe more of a presence over the weekend with the Olympics, but can't happen. Won't be possible. So I'll basically check in after it's all said and done to go over the gold medal match, and I'll try to cover some other stuff as well. Let's start with Nadal-Fucsovics from this morning. My takeaways from that: 6-4 win, third set for Nadal, another match that eclipsed the 2.5-hour mark for Rafa. Not very encouraging. That's my opinion. Not very encouraging from Nadal's standpoint. I don't think it's what you're looking for out of him. And I'm not someone who normally takes this stance when it comes to first-round matches. I've learned over the years that it's not necessary that a player is in great form in the first round or the second round. What is necessary is that they win. And if you get through it and you win your matches, you give yourself a chance to find your best level towards the end of the tournament. That's what ultimately matters. And so often you can be fooled by assuming that bad form in the first round is going to be in bad form in the second, or, similar play in the third or the fourth, or vice versa. Just so often, the only thing that really matters is winning, because the next time you take the court against a new opponent on a new day, your game is likely going to look and feel completely different. And the matchup's going to be different as well. So I'm not one to really hit the panic button, and not that I'm hitting the panic button, but I'm not one to really get all concerned about a first-round match. But I've seen enough times from Rafa in 2024 where he gets into wars in the early rounds, and it takes attacks. It takes too much out of him, and then he doesn't have everything in the gas tank that he needs moving forward. And that's why I think it does matter. It does matter, in my opinion, for Nadal under these circumstances, that you're able to take care of business rather easily. Now, the other part of this is Martin Fucsovics. I'm a huge Fucsovics guy. He's a great player. I have so much respect for him that half the time when I've been watching him throughout his career, I've thought to myself, man, pro tennis must be hard if this guy isn't a top 20 player. The athlete that he is, the fitness that he possesses, the forehand. He's got a good-looking serve. He's got a great slice backhand. He can even volley. I mean, there's a lot of boxes that are checked. So often with Fucsovics, he's been one of those players where, especially when he's at his best, where you watch him and you think, boy, if this guy isn't top 20, that tells you all you need to know about how difficult this is. I just don't think Fucsovics was really at his best. I mean, Martin he's a guy, he's obviously known for his fitness, and I didn't think he looked that fit today. I don't know if it's the fact that he hasn't had much continuity recently, or that there have been physical issues recently that have prevented him from building up his fitness, but I didn't think his legs looked all that strong. I thought he was pretty heavily affected when the rallies were extending. He was looking pretty tired towards the tail end of the longer exchanges. There was some residue after the longer exchanges in terms of how he was playing the points to follow. So it's Fucsovics, who's not really in great shape. And that's his biggest strength. Plus, he's a righty who's got some backhand issues, particularly on clay. And Nadal should smoke a righty with backhand issues on clay. Now, I love Fucsovics' slice. He's got a great slice. But you cannot slice against Nadal, especially on clay. Martin knew that, so he was mostly going to the drive. But his drive backhand, it is the weakest part of his game, at least technically. I also think he gets tight and he gets nervous, and that's held him back throughout his career, the nerve management. But certainly, the two-hander is exploitable. And you saw throughout the match that when Nadal was able to get it to the backhand of Fucsovics and be aggressive off of it, or keep it there for long enough, it was over. Rafa could feast. So when he was able to just execute his game by getting it into Fucsovics' backhand, either attacking off of it or, again, keeping the ball there long enough where he would get to Fucsovics' legs, or he would take advantage of the consistency issue there or the shot tolerance issue there, Nadal had it. So I really felt like the patterns were there for Nadal to run away with the match. The tactics were there for Nadal to run away with the match, and he didn't and he couldn't because of uncharacteristic mistakes and inconsistencies and, at times, tightness. Clear nervous moments where you could see that he just kind of lost the ability to free up and hit out on the ball. Struggled with the depth. Sometimes struggled to even get it to Fucsovics' backhand because he wasn't hitting the ball big enough or deep enough into that corner. So I thought nerves got in the way. I'll say, the drop shot was huge in some big moments, some tight moments where he was kind of losing the confidence on the forehand and he needed a way to finish points and he could go to the drop shot. So that was helpful for him. And ultimately he was able to, he pulls out the victory. So 6-4 in the third. There was also kind of a pretty nervous patch for him after 40-15, trying to serve out the match where he went forehand error, double fault. But on the next point, he was able to just make Fucsovics hit like 6-7 backhands in a row. Martin ended up pulling the trigger pretty low percentage down the line on a two-hander, and he missed it. I mean, when I tell you Rafa pounded the backhand over and over again and did not relent, that's exactly what he did on that point. And then on the match point, he hit a wide serve and did drill a forehand into the open court for a +1 winner, getting over the finish line. So that's all I got on Nadal-Fucsovics. Those are my thoughts. Is any of this going to matter ultimately? Nadal's shortcomings? I don't know if physically it's going to matter. I think it could. I think it's another very physical first-round match. He's got to play doubles tomorrow, which I don't think is too tough on the body. But I still think the mileage was a little bit unnecessary, a little bit over the top. And I do think it's going to get very physical against Djokovic comparatively. And I don't know. It could be a factor. Certainly, I saw some things in the match, which I'll get to a little bit later, that were enlightening for me and will kind of alter my thinking about what might happen in the Rafa versus Djokovic second round match. Obviously, Djokovic had a first round match as well. He beat Matthew Ebden 0-1 or 1-0. I forget which one, but he only lost one game. I know that there are some complaints circulating about the system that the Olympics uses, where when a player withdraws from the singles, because there's no qualifying, and because there's no qualifying, there's no lucky losers, there's no alternate, You basically have to pull from the doubles. It does suck. It's not really right for the competition. You have several first-round matches that are essentially a joke because you just have doubles players trying to do their best in the singles, and it's unlikely to go well. So it's not great. I have not heard a solution brought to the table. Just, it's one of those things. Happens all the time in tennis. A lot of complaining, not a lot of solutions. I don't know what the solution is. If you want to bring an alternate on site, how are you incentivizing them? Like, what are you telling them is the incentive to come to the games without a guaranteed spot in the draw? You have to give them something, right? I think you do, at least. So that's all I have with Djokovic-Ebden. I actually missed the match completely, but I just think it's funny to see so many people complaining and nobody offering a solution on the whole doubles thing. All right, now for the preview, Nadal-Djokovic. The first thing I want to say, I'm happy the draw gods gave us this. I think the more Nadal-Djokovic, the better. I'm excited for this. I hope Rafa and Novak are excited for this. I hope all the fans are excited for this. You might feel like there's some draw misfortune here, but I don't feel that way. At the end of the day, that's just up to personal taste. As grateful as I am, though, to settle into another Nadal-Djokovic match, I don't think this is going to look like what it normally looks like. And that's a warning off the top. I'm afraid that visually, watching these two go at it on the tennis court is not going to look all that familiar. We saw for over a decade when these two met, it was brick wall against brick wall, ball machine against ball machine. It was an insane level of baseline tennis on a point-by-point basis, a sustained level of skill and physicality and baseline variation and weapons and defense and finesse and mental willpower. I could go down the list, okay? It was magic, always. And I'm just going to say, right, like, I don't expect that in this match. And I don't think we're going to get that in this match. I think it's going to look like two players post-prime. That's what I think it's going to look like. There's been a loss of speed from both. Maybe 6 months ago, I would have said there's not that much loss of speed from Novak, but after the Wimbledon final that we just witnessed, where it was very vivid, I don't know that that's going to look all that different in 2 weeks. And maybe it's because of the knee, or maybe it's because of age. It's probably somewhere in between, and it's because of both. But whatever it is, you have two players who are not as quick around the court as they used to be, and it completely changes the dynamics of what it looks like when these two play. And I also think there's going to be intense nerves. I talked about this in the preview. For Djokovic, it's circumstantial. I just think for him, this being a tournament that only comes around every 4 years, a tournament that has double meaning to him. One, he's a prideful guy when it comes to representing Serbia, extremely prideful. But two, a missing piece in his resume, which has been very well documented. But it's all kind of manifested itself in a level of tension and self-imposed pressure for Novak that I think surpasses basically anything else for him, which I think was evident by his reaction when he lost to Del Potro at the Olympics in 2016. His reaction, or his overall play when he faced Zverev at the Olympics in 2021, and even a little bit in the bronze medal match against Pablo Carreño Busta there. I think he wants it so badly to the point it makes it harder for him to play well. And for Nadal, it has actually nothing to do with the circumstance. I don't think the Olympics add extra pressure for Rafa. I just think he's struggled with his nerves on a consistent basis in his matches ever since Madrid. There's a certain freedom that Rafa was playing with in Brisbane when he first came back at the start of this year. And then I saw it again, I think, in Barcelona, where Nadal, at least from the baseline, was kind of in like practice Nadal mode, just hitting huge off the ground, unlocking his power with a certain ease that I'm not quite seeing as much as the season progressed through Madrid, Rome, Roland Garros, even in this first round against Martin Fucsovics, where more often I've seen him kind of struggling to land the kill shot and pull away from opponents. That third set against Navone and Bostad was lengthened by Nadal getting nervous. The Zverev match, Rafa had an incredible level in that match, but he came out paralyzed with nerves, lost the first set because of it, and then played pretty level, pretty even with Zverev in the second set and the third set until the scoreboard pressure set in. That's where Zverev was better. And he was able to kind of use that to his advantage. So I see Rafa on a pretty consistent basis in big spots, struggling to unlock his power, struggling for depth, and his movement can't save him. It's not going to look like classic Raffole. If I'm wrong, that'll be great. I'll be really happy to be wrong. There's still going to be immense skill on display on a regular basis. They feel the game so well. They think the game so well. They both hit the tennis ball and do incredible things with the tennis ball. So that hasn't changed at all. But overall, I still think it's going to look pretty different. Objectively, Djokovic, he's the better player right now. That can't be a bold statement, right? I don't think that's the reason I put the word objectively in front of that is because I don't think this needs to be something that I am feeling out with. Basically, this isn't something that I need to rely on my observation skills to discern. This isn't an eye test thing. Let me put it this way. Nadal's last big quarterfinal was Wimbledon 2022. At a big tournament, the last time he was able to get to a quarterfinal at a big tournament was Wimbledon 2022. Djokovic has done it 4 times this year, and it's his worst year since 2007 or 2006. And he's been able to do it 4 times. What has Novak done since Wimbledon 2022? 3 major titles, 2 year-end championship titles. There's no comparison there. So from an evidence standpoint, from a result standpoint, even with Djokovic having not been able to really beat elite opponents this year so far, even with that being the case, there is no question who, in general, the stronger tennis player is in 2024. It's Novak Djokovic. His decline has not been as steep as Rafa's decline as a tennis player. It hasn't. That said, I know I also said this in the preview, the conditions could not be designed more perfectly for Nadal to make this competitive. I don't think there would be much of a discussion if they played right now on a grass court or a hard court. But if you were going to adjust the sliders, if you were going to play a game of Sims or pretend to play tennis gods for a second and try to create a set of circumstance that would help Nadal win, it would pretty much be this. You'd put it on Court Philippe Chatrier, Nadal's best court. You'd make it a first or second round match so there's less wear on Nadal's body. You'd make it best of 3 so Nadal's endurance wouldn't be as much of a factor. And you would probably make Djokovic play at the Olympics where he feels the maximum amount of pressure. Right? Conditions are perfect for Nadal making this competitive, and I believe for that reason, he will make it competitive. I'll say right now, before I kind of get into the tactics, I think Djokovic is going to win. I don't have to struggle too much with that. I'm pretty confident that Djokovic is going to win. But I've seen the betting odds for this match. I don't agree with them. I think they are way too tilted. I think they're way too steep or long for Nadal. And I give him a better chance than what, for just by one metric, that, the betting market, I give Nadal a better chance than that, a better probability of winning than that. That's me. Let's talk about some other topics. First of all, how does clay change the equation in their head-to-head? So overall, it's 30-29. Djokovic leads the head-to-head. Surface has played a big role in how things have played out because on hard court, Djokovic leads 20-7. On grass, it's 2-2. On clay, it's 20-8 for Nadal. There has been a particular slant, a particular skew recent. If you look at the last 20 matches, this stat courtesy of Big 3 Tennis on Twitter, Djokovic Nadal last 20 matches, hard court is 7-0 Djokovic, clay court is 7-5 Nadal, and grass court is 1-0 Djokovic. Not only does that show an overall advantage for Djokovic, it shows a real difference between clay court and hard court success for Nadal in this particular head-to-head. So what are the reasons for that? I think, first of all, it allows Nadal, the clay allows Nadal enough time to change direction with his forehand down the line and break up that ad side cross-court rally, not only break it up, but do damage out of it and off of it, which has been a problem, I think, for Rafa in quicker conditions in this head-to-head because Djokovic's two-handed backhand has stood up to Nadal's cross-court forehand. Able to take the ball early, on the rise, hard, cross-court, deep, strip Nadal of time, take away all of the, sap the power of that forehand, make it sit up, make it attackable, because you're not letting Nadal hit through the court with that aggressive forehand down the line that can be so dangerous. But on clay, just the extra time that Rafa has off of his forehand, I think liberates him to take that forehand down the line, which is his main baseline weapon. That he's at least the one that he's able to get on a regular basis, because it's not his best shot. His best shot is probably his forehand inside out, but the opportunity to hit that aggressively doesn't present itself as often as the forehand down the line. I think another factor is Nadal being the heavier hitter in the head-to-head, and that has mattered more on clay. I mean, might be true on grass, might be true on hard court. Nadal is the heavier hitter, but it means more on clay. The weight of shot is at more of a premium because it's harder to hit through the court, especially when these guys are both so fast. Tough to come forward and finish against these guys. So who can create the high margin damage from the baseline? And on clay, so often that comes down to not who changes direction best, not who has the most precise ball, but it does come down to, well, the ball is slowing down more off the bounce. You have to generate more of your own pace. And when the ball hits the court on the other side, it's going to slow down more, which means you need more muscle to get the ball through the court, which means every extra bit of topspin is going to come in that much more handy. So Nadal's forehand being a viable, high-margin, damaging weapon from the back of the court, where Djokovic hasn't quite had that quite as much, I think that's been a big difference for them on clay versus the other surface. That's something that's skewed towards Nadal. I also think the return styles favor Nadal. It also comes down to time. Djokovic takes the return nice and early, likes to rush his opponents deep down the middle. Hard to hit a rushing return on clay. It's possible, but it's a little bit tougher. And Nadal gets more forehands into play, which he wants, and he's able to do more with that forehand because even Djokovic taking the return early isn't rushing Rafa quite as much. Meanwhile, Nadal, with his deep return style, liking to hit a higher return with less pace, more height over the net, a little bit slower, just to kind of neutralize the point. I think on surfaces that really reward offense and aggression, you can still hit a good +1 ball oftentimes off of that high return and kind of set the point how you want. But, clay just allows Nadal's, I'd say, more passive return style because he's deeper in the court and because he's not really hitting as forcefully on the return of serve or taking as much time away. It just allows him, the clay, to just get back into the point on a more regular basis. In the quicker conditions, that return style just isn't quite as conducive. So, return styles, ground stroke weaponry, weight of shot, and Nadal's ability to change direction with his forehand down the line. Those, to me, are my three main reasons why Nadal has more success on clay in this particular matchup compared to when he plays Djokovic on the other surfaces. Tactically for Djokovic, I am curious to see how aggressive he is. Does it look like Wimbledon? Does he want to stay in attack? Does he want to be in command all the time? Will he play that way again or not? So that's a big question. I think that he's going to be more comfortable staying in rallies. Maybe not quite as threatened by Rafa. Certainly not if he can get it to Nadal's backhand. Perhaps feeling better physically with more distance, more removal from the knee operation that he had, the knee surgery. Maybe just realizing that because it's clay, he's not going to be as quickly rewarded for executing the attacking style, and that it's going to be important that he's able to play some extra balls and be patient and work the point. I think for all these reasons, I think we'll get a more patient Djokovic, but I think that's something to watch out for. From a pattern standpoint, I think he should dial back the aggression a little bit. But for me, it's actually change direction on the backhand down the line as much as he can. Not necessarily aggressively, but just to play the deuce side cross court. I think Djokovic should try to avoid the ad side cross court. I think he did this pretty well at Roland Garros in 2021 when he beat Nadal in that semifinal, and he was able to really feast off of that deuce side cross court, his forehand into Nadal's backhand. I think if you go to that backhand well, you're going to get short balls into your forehand. It's what Djokovic needs. He wants short balls going into his forehand. And I think he'll be able to set that up by winning the deuce side cross court. Nadal's backhand, first of all, I think sometimes it's gotten a little bit cagey recently. He's dropped it short in the court, he's kind of lost the aggression off of that wing, which will allow Djokovic to kind of get the first punch in, which is going to be crucial. And physically, I think it's pretty difficult for Nadal to run out to his backhand side. It just seems like it wears on the body a little bit more when he has to hit open stance backhands. And when he's running to his forehand, it takes a little bit less out of him, to my eyes. So I feel like that cross court on the deuce side is going to be where Djokovic is going to be looking to really make some noise. And to set that rally, because I think Nadal wants the opposite. Nadal wants the ad side, and he wants a chance to open up the point, break open the point with an aggressive forehand of his own. So what's going to set that rally? Well, for Djokovic, and this has been a constant theme, I think, in their head-to-head, he needs to be able to get his backhand return to Nadal's backhand whenever possible, or deep middle with applying enough pressure where Djokovic can set the rally on the fourth shot, on the fourth ball. So just avoiding Nadal's aggressive +1 forehand. That's going to be key, because I bet Rafa's +1 forehand more often than not is either going to go into Djokovic's backhand to set the cross court on the ad side, or it can go the other way, but it does serious damage. One or the other. Obviously, it can do serious damage into either wing, but I don't think Nadal is going to be trading his forehand into Djokovic's forehand. I bet we almost never see that. That's not the pattern for Rafa at all. I think the key for Nadal, in the same vein, is he does need to hit out on that backhand. Be aggressive enough on that backhand where he doesn't feel like Djokovic can just settle into that cross court on the deuce side and just wait for a chance to find a forehand to really hit and hurt him off of. Nadal needs to send a message that two-hander, it's not a safe spot on the court. Ultimately, I think Djokovic is just going to change direction a ton, and he's going to be able to run Nadal more than Nadal can handle being run. That's how I see the match really playing out. And I think Djokovic can really take the legs out of Rafa just with the baseline precision and how often he's able to move the ball around the court with the sharp angles and the changing of direction down the line. The way for Nadal technically to counter that is going to be, he needs to try to potentially get Djokovic to play as much defense as possible. I don't see Nadal having enough on the serve and enough on the return in terms of those dynamics to really make that happen. But if he's playing with more freedom than Djokovic, then he can make it happen. If Nadal is going to cut it loose and Djokovic is going to play tight, we'll see that in terms of who's dictating who, in my opinion. We will see that. All right. Let's end on... Oh, by the way, I'm gonna say Djokovic in 3. I'm gonna give Nadal a set here. I think likely maybe the first set. First set to Nadal. Djokovic wins in 3. That's my prediction. Retirement outlooks. Amy Lundy on 3, the tennis show, asked an interesting question. She's just pondering, what does this mean for retirement? Could this be an inflection point for Rafa or Novak, but particularly for Rafa, because that's where it's kind of swirling. And I thought, I'm not really sure with Nadal. Does winning push him more towards retirement, or does losing push him more towards retirement? Because right now it's all up in the air. What is it? The logic is that, winning could push him more towards retirement because he gets satisfied. He says, okay, that's a good way to go out. Now I'm good. Now I'm done. Losing might push him towards retirement in terms of getting discouraged enough to say, okay, I can't really win anymore. That's enough then. So there's 2 possible scenarios here. Which is it? And I thought about it. The more I think about it, the more I think it is losing. I don't get the sense that winning is going to push Rafa towards an end point at this point in time. Again, this is all somewhat speculative, so it's very hard to really make a solid 1 + 1 = 2 argument here. But I will say, if that's the case, if it's losing that pushes Rafa closer to calling it quits and not winning, if that's the case, I think this is an important match. I think this is a very, very important match because let's look at the circumstance here. I already talked about how all the conditions favor Rafa. Not to mention the fact that he skipped Wimbledon. He's been on clay for a while now. He's been healthy for a while now. He's had great preparation coming into this Olympics. It's kind of all set up for him to succeed. If he can't be competitive, at least, against Djokovic, that's got to send a message, right? That would be discouraging in a big way. So I think that this is actually pretty important. It has the potential to be pretty important because if Nadal can't hang with Novak in this match, I can't see a world in which that's not some sort of wake-up call in terms of his ability to contend in the future. Djokovic, similar idea. Certainly for Novak, winning is not going to drive him out because he's got a lot of ambition still. There's still ambition there. And ultimately, he feels healthy, and I think he came into this season not even thinking about retirement at all, and nobody would be thinking about retirement after winning 3 majors and the ATP finals. Nobody. So, I mean, Novak included, I don't think that was really a part of it for him. But at this point, he has to start, the concern for Novak, I'm sure, is also building right now. And if he loses to Nadal, I don't think it's quite as much of a stake in the sand as much as Nadal getting dominated by Djokovic would be. But I do think the frustration and the doubts would really get to another level for Novak. But I think the point is, when it comes to this match, is that it will send a message. Whatever happens, it will send a message for either player as far as where they're at in the overall landscape. Hope everybody enjoys watching it, has a great time, soaks it in, and I will speak with everybody after the match is over. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.